I had this pretty neat piece of cardboard sitting around that had some cool bends in it, and I thought it would make a nice castle front. So with a couple of chip containers, the plan started to come together for my castle. I started out by cutting an arch, but I changed my mind and squared it off, which was a decision that would come back to bite me later. So with that cut out, it was time to do a little bit of woodwork to frame things up to hold it in the position it needed to be for the shape I was going for. So using some basswood pieces that I found in the clearance section at the craft store, I glued the framework to the cardboard. I cut some XPS foam to make my stones, and I used the good old method of shake it up with some rocks for texture. I felt like this inside corner part was more important to get just right with the placement of the stones. Once I had that figured out, it was time to get gluing them down. And once they were all glued down, now it was time to get to the part that bit me in the butt. I realized I wanted to do an arch. I'd cut out a rectangle thinking drawbridge and realized I still needed to do my arch. So I added a piece of cardboard back in and started putting in my arch pieces. Once I had the castle front done, then it was time to work on the towers. I took a couple of chip cans and I cut them in half, and I took another chip can and cut sections out in order to extend them and make them taller. I had sanded all the plastic surfaces to make sure that glue would stick very well to it. Hot gluing individual stones to the towers was very time consuming, but it was well worth it in the end. It was by this point that I decided to make this into a screen for tabletop gaming for the Game Master. I used a pencil to put lines into just two straight flat pieces of foam, but I felt like it wasn't enough, and so I used a hot wire tool to make the grooves deeper, and it worked really good. Once I had all the foam work done, then I took a wadded up piece of aluminum foil and rolled it over everything to give it some nice texture. I almost forgot the tops of the towers. Once the tower tops were done, I gave everything a coating of Mod Podge paint and a little bit of water mixed, and then I painted everything up with a nice dark gray. Once that was done, then I used some more balsa and basswood pieces to make my drawbridge. The plan was to make a drawbridge that actually worked and moved up and down. And now the satisfying part of smoothing out the glue. Once I had all the boards lined up the way I wanted them, it was time to let it dry. While the drawbridge was drying, I decided to make the framework holding things together into little platforms. That way the lower platform could be used for storing dice and the upper platform for figures. Not really sure how the tops of towers are built, so I took the foam board that was the tops and I painted it a couple different shades of brown, with some lines, and then I painted in some dark lines to make individual boards out of it. In hindsight, I could have done this with real boards, but I had already put the tops of the towers on, so I did what I had to do. Now for the spaces in the bricks and stones. I used some grout mixed up to fill in those gaps. Now I did it a couple different ways. You can see the tower in the background's already done. I had used the icing bag for decorating cakes with the grout mixed with Mod Podge paint and a little bit of water. And it came out okay. It worked all right, but not great. So I tried some grout and just straight water and tried that out, and that works even worse. It just got to the point where it was just water coming out and not much of the grout. Here I'm trying to mix up some more grout for the front of the castle, and that's just some picky stuff to work with, getting the consistency just right. But once I did, it was great. So the third and final method that I used to put the grout in was a fairly stiff, cheap paintbrush and the grout mixed with water, and I basically just scooped it with the brush and pushed it in and pushed it around with the bristles, and that would seem to be the fastest and easiest way to do it. I just worked slowly, small section by small section, using an artist sponge damp, and use that to wipe off the excess and just keep things cleaned up as I worked along. Some final cleanup of the top, and it was coming along great. I thought this was working very well, and I love the look. Now, because the first tower had some paint mixed in the grout, it came out a little darker. This was just straight grout, so it was very light in color, as that was what it was. So I took some watered down gray paint and I went through and meticulously painted each individual crack to get everything to blend together nicely. And with the right watered down consistency, it was very easy to just push it around the cracks. It would flow and fill in easily and just worked out great. You may have noticed earlier in the video the drawbridge sitting there, it was all stained up. I stained that with real wood stain, and because that smelled so bad, I gave the bridge a coating of Mod Podge, hoping it would seal it up. Ended up taking 3 coats, but worked in my favor because it made the bridge have a really cool look to it, almost like it was oiled. I was making the holes for the chains for the drawbridge. It was not going great. It took some hacking and slashing, but I got there. Then I needed something to put in the holes to run the chains through. And I had this old pen that didn't work, so I decided to take it apart and see what would work the best. And going through the pieces, I had settled on the rubber grippy part as the part that I wanted to use. So I cut it in 1/3 and 2/3 pieces to get rid of the ridgy part, and then the 2/3 piece I cut in half, so I ended up using 2/3 of it. After getting those in place and getting them glued in, I painted them a gray color so that they matched with everything else. Thank you to my wife for giving me an old chain that was just an old necklace. I cut it down into pieces and I spray painted it with a hammered metal look. I had bent some good sized steel wire into loops and glued them into holes that I put in the ends of the drawbridge for ways to hook the chains to. Once the chains were hooked to the drawbridge, then it was time to put them through the holes in the wall and get them all set up for operation. So I took a couple of the largest fishing sinkers I had in my tackle box and painted them up gray and hooked them to the ends of the chains to give it some counterweight to hold the chains kind of tight. I thought it worked really good, but I decided that I had the chains about 5 links too long. Once I got the extra links taken off and had that done, I glued the 2 towers to the sides of the front wall. Once the towers were good and dry and I was putting on the side walls, I decided I unrolled a cotton ball and used that, hoping that maybe some fibrous material within the glue between the 2 sides would help hold things together. It seemed to work well on the one side, so I did it for the other side. And with that being the last action, the project was done. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.